Hello and welcome to Personal Finance. I am Kukuletu Cele. Now, preparing for your death is a topic not many people want to talk about, but death is inevitable. And if you don't take the time to plan, your family's financial security could be at risk. To tell us more, Riaan Botha, Absa's National Manager for Will Services, joins me now in studio. Good to have you with us, despite the dreary topic that we'll be divulging. But I take it is an important one. And,
yes, definitely.
You and I are both alive. Where should us as individuals start when it comes to our estate planning?
It is very, very important to speak to your financial advisor on a regular basis to make sure that the life insurance and other insurance that you have is up to date and covers all your liabilities, as well as making sure that the family and the loved ones, when you're not around anymore, are taken care of.
Tell us about those product options, because I think so often we get confused by the product availability and what's out there on the market. Are there certain terms and terminology that you should be aware of before you even take on these life insurance products?
There's various options when it comes to life insurance. My suggestion is speak to your financial advisor. He will do a proper financial needs analysis for you to determine what sort of product you need. As I said, you need to make sure that the right product addresses your needs. Otherwise, you might come at a situation where there will be a liquidity shortage upon your death and your family will sit on the streets.
That's not a very positive outlook. And how often should something like that be reviewed?
Anything that changes in your life that will affect you financially, or in addition to the family, you need to change your financial plan.
Are there any particular tax benefits in having any of these life insurance policies?
Not really tax benefits. It will save you a lot of heartache, or especially your family a lot of heartache, but there are certain benefits if you're looking at company insurance policies for the companies itself. So for instance, if a key person insurance is taken out on an individual within a company, there is certain tax deductions for that company.
I think we'll get into that in a bit as well when it comes to the beneficiaries getting some of that money out. But now I've spoken to my financial advisor. We've got my estate in order. How should I prioritize the spending? You mentioned the life insurance. Should I also be forking out the money for my funeral?
Definitely. Part of your financial plan, looking at your entire life and making sure that when you're not around anymore, that your family is not going to sit with a big funeral bill. So make sure that the money gets paid out as soon as possible. Look at taking out a funeral policy. It's the easiest way to cover for those unexpected expenses.
Now, a lot of this also depends on paperwork, in particular your last will and testament, which is your area of expertise. Maybe walk us through the typical pitfalls first that South Africans make before we get into the nitty-gritty as to what needs to be included in a will.
Most people think that if you draw up a will, then you're going to die. That's not the case.
Jeez.
You need to prepare for that day. There are numerous things that you need to look at when drafting a will. Are there previous spouses? Are there minor children? All those factors need to be taken into consideration when drafting a will. My suggestion is speak to a professional to assist you in drafting the will, to make sure that the person that's going to be executing your estate, the executor in terms of your will, knows what he's doing. It's a very complex situation that you don't want just any person to deal with.
Exactly. I think something we also forget is that you can also give certain details with regard to your will as to how you'd like to be buried or how certain assets should be distributed. How accurate do you need to be in the wording of your will?
It depends on your personal situation. You can go as far as saying where your ashes should be scattered. There is people that do that. But take care of the essentials first, and then you can go work on the nitty-gritty things.
What about someone who might be in a coma and is not in a capacity to take decisions of their own? Do you also need to include details like that in a will?
Yes. You need to, before that person gets to that situation, you need to make sure that those situations are avoided as far as possible, where the family will have to make the decision on their behalf. That's called a living will. There are organizations within South Africa where you can register and get a physical card from them, which then holds a contract that they can contact them in case the doctors need to turn off the machines.
You touched on the beneficiaries just a moment ago, and I want us to delve in deeper there. Spouses and minors, what are the key considerations, and even former spouses you mentioned, to take into account when you're distributing your assets to them? Can they take full ownership right away?
A child under the age of 18 cannot inherit. So if you don't specifically state in your will that a testamentary trust be set up for minor children, then those funds will go into the guardian's fund. That's a fund administered by the Magistrate of the High Court, and it only receives cash. So if you've got properties that the kids will inherit, they will have to sell that property and the cash will be held in the guardian's fund. So you need to make sure that the will covers the A to Z's of your estate planning and to take care of the uncertainties. You're not going to be around to tell the people what needs to be done. This is your last will and testament, your last wishes. So you need to make sure that it's all in order.
Issues on spouses and former spouses, and if your spouse wishes to remarry in the future?
If you are divorced, you've got a grace period of 3 months to change your old will. If you do not change your old will, then the law states that it will be as if your former spouse, you still wanted your former spouse to inherit.
Whoa.
So it's very important, update your will in those types of situations. We've had situations where former spouses inherited.
And what happens there? Clearly family feuds begin.
Fighting. Yeah. Infighting. Remember, inheritance, there's assets, there's cash. There is always going to be infighting. Hopefully with a very close-knit family, that won't happen. It's a very emotional state in a person's life. So you need to make sure that the family knows of your cremation wishes, your burial wishes, etc. So it's not a surprise when you're not around anymore.
I want to throw another spanner into the works just because the drama is working for me right now. If it so happens that you have children that you didn't acknowledge when you were alive and they arrive at your funeral in your will and testament, are you able to make any recommendations as to what assets go to them, or
Yes.
if any at all?
Any person can be nominated in terms of your will. It's your assets, it's your right to distribute your estate according to your own wishes, as long as it's lawful. But you have scenarios where the odd child pops up that the current spouse did not know about. And a lot of the times that's taken care of in the will, and it's the first time the new spouse now finds out about it. So try and avoid that. Be open and honest to your family. Make sure they know what's going on in your life.
Leave the drama for TV,
Yes.
clearly.
Definitely.
Something else that we need to touch on is obviously the costs involved with these kind of services. So I take it, depending on who you're consulting with, whether it's someone at your bank or a CFP, do the costs necessarily vary?
Most of them are the same. The consultation fees most of the time is a stock standard fee. The executor's fees are governed by law, which is currently 3.5% of the gross value of your estate. Depending on the size and the complexity of your estate, we can negotiate on those fees. There is this misperception that the banks are very expensive when it comes to the administration of estates. We're governed by law. And with Absa, we've got a dedicated estates department that handles only the administration of estates.
When you say expensive, what kind of amounts are we talking about here?
Depending on what the value of your estate is, 3.5% of the total value of your estate can be a lot of money. So you need to take care of that, as well as should the value of your estate exceed 3.5 million, then there's estate duty taxes of 20% payable.
Sure.
Yeah.
Capital gains tax, does that
Capital
impact on you?
gains tax as well. On any assets that has shown a growth that is not exempted, there will be capital gains tax payable as well. Death is a capital gains tax event, so you need to prepare for all of that, and your financial advisor will advise you accordingly.
So that's something that the beneficiaries obviously need to look out for. So often, are there any times when there are mistakes where a minor will expect to inherit R1 million and they forget about the taxes involved there?
Yes, it happens very often. We had a case this morning where a beneficiary that thought he was a beneficiary in a will wanted additional money from the estate, and we had to tell him, but sorry, you're not part of the will.
Oh.
Yeah.
So clearly the message needs to get out there that you need to be quite precise in the information you leave in your will. You mentioned the executor of the state. You touched on the cap that's been placed on the fee, 3.9%.
3.5%.
If I'm
VAT excluded, yeah.
There we go. The executor, how important is that decision in choosing the right person to execute your last will and testament?
Since November of last year, the executor, if the estate is more than 250,000, the executor needs to be either an accountant, a lawyer, or a trust company, or you need to be assisted by one of those individuals. So it is very important to get a professional that can assist you in the process. It's not an easy process. It's a very tedious, very long process that requires a lot of professional attention.
Is it ever okay to choose your spouse?
It is okay. You can choose your spouse, and most of the time a lot of people chooses their spouse, and then the spouse can go shop for the best person to handle their estate.
Well, we've got about a minute to go before the show wraps up. Maybe the key takeaway points here, as well as leaving the drama at home for the viewers today that we can learn.
Speak to your financial advisor at least once a year. Make sure your will is drafted by a professional person, and talk to your family. South Africans tend to not want to discuss financial planning and wills with their family. The family needs to know what is in your will. Avoid surprises as far as possible.
Just to close off with, if financial advisor isn't your first point of call when it comes to planning your estate, is a bank the best place to go?
We've got a dedicated team of very experienced estate planning consultants that can assist in that.
Riaan, thank you so much for your time this evening. Hopefully we've educated the nation with regard to this. Many thanks to Riaan Botha, Absa's National Manager for Will Services. And that's it for Personal Finance this evening. Get in touch with us. You can send us an email or tweet any of your comments to @CNBC Africa using the hashtag Finance410, or even tweet myself @Gukumfupi on Twitter. Till next time, it's good night.